Welcome to the 47th CALLERLAB Convention in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today is April the 12th, and this is the session on online resources. My name is Barry Clasper, and my co-presenter is Dottie Welch, sitting down here in front of me. And we're going to be talking about some of the online resources that are presented by CALLERLAB. There's lots of online resources out there that CALLERLAB did not create or does not contribute to that are available. Those of you who know anything about Google probably found lots of them out there. But these resources are hosted by CALLERLAB and they're maintained by CALLERLAB. So the first resource I want to talk about is the CALLERLAB knowledge base. How many of you have heard of the knowledge base? As I look around the room, I'm a little dismayed by, I know all of you have either been in this presentation before or I've talked to you personally about the knowledge base. So maybe preaching to the choir here. But spread the word, because it's amazing to me how many people have still never heard of this. The knowledge base got started in 2015. I won't go into the long history of it, but it's been operational since then. It's been growing and being enhanced and improved all the time. So we're really quite pleased with the way it is now, and but it's a continuous improvement kind of situation. So the purpose of this particular slide that you see up here is to emphasize something really important. When I first started the knowledge base, it was sort of a construction, personal work project of my own. And I put it in what I call the sandbox domain, CALLERLABknowledge.org. So that's where I built it. But the intention was always to have it eventually hosted by CALLERLAB. Unfortunately, it took us a long time to get it so that it's actually on CALLERLAB servers. And that happened just this past year, like last fall sometime. In the meantime, we always did have this knowledge.callerlab.org URL that worked for it, but it was a redirect. So that went to a single CALLERLAB page that then redirected you to this CALLERLABknowledge.org. And a lot of people noticed that. They said, well, I can, dispense with the redirect, I'll go right to CALLERLABknowledge.org. And then some of them actually had bookmarks to sub-pages within CALLERLABknowledge.org. And for the past year or so, I've had notices out and I've been trying to advertise the fact that this is going away. CALLERLABknowledge.org, the domain expires next month. I ain't renewing it. So if you've got stuff that's bookmarked against CALLERLABknowledge.org, it will stop working. Every time you use it, what you will get instead of the page that you're expecting is a page that says expiry notice. This is going to happen. Change your URL to this, and it takes you back to the real CALLERLAB knowledge page. So that will stop, that courtesy will stop happening. You will just get a 404, no such thing exists kind of message as of May. So that's the importance of that particular slide. Just before I give you a tour of the knowledge base and kind of explain a bit about how it works, and then maybe take some questions if you're here because you tried to do something and it didn't work and you'd like to find out what's going on, happy to do that. So what have we been doing during the pandemic? Well, one thing that happened is the knowledge base has sort of drifted around within the organization in terms of where they put the people that were working on it. So we started as a subcommittee of one larger committee and went somewhere else, and I won't bore you with the long history of that, but again in the past year they established a knowledge base committee, which at the moment consists of myself, as chairman and Chris Jensen as vice chairman. We're a committee of 2. And Chris isn't here. She didn't come to convention this year. So I had my committee meeting in one of the stalls in the bathroom, met with myself and decided what I was going to do. So that happened. We've done a lot of reorganization of the content that we had. What I had started with had sort of grown and grown and grown, and we've, when Chris joined me, we did a lot of brainstorming about how we could better organize it to make it easier for people to find. And so we spent a long time rejigging how the categories and the tags and all that kind of thing worked against the content. We migrated CALLERLAB. When they put up the new website, it went on new servers that are rented by CALLERLAB, and then we joined them on their servers. And that's why the CALLERLABknowledge.org is going away, and now knowledge.callerlab.org is the only one that will work. When the Social Connections Committee was formed and started generating content, it became clear that we needed a special place to house that, because the whole thrust for the sociability aspects of our activity is becoming really important within CALLERLAB. Like, we've sort of had a bit of an epiphany organizationally in the last few years that sociability is a huge element in our activity, and that in fact most people, at least when they start, that's really what they're there for. The dancing is just kind of a pretext for getting together with other people, and socializing gives them a focus for the socializing, but it's really the socializing they're after. So we want to make sure that we properly treat that element of our activity. So we'll show you how the knowledge base has been modified to accommodate that. And then there's been tons of new articles that have appeared in the last 2 to 3 years. Just to give you an idea of how what's active and what's not, some usage statistics. We currently have 307 current articles. I don't think I've added anything since I built this slide. They're divided into 4 main categories. So a category is just a group of material that's broadly aimed at a broad subject area. 42 tags. A tag is simply like a little sticky note that we put on an article saying this article is about this stuff. And an article can have many tags on it. So that way, if you go look at a tag, you know you're going to find articles under that tag that have to do with the subject matter of the tag. In addition to that, a lot of people think, well, 300 articles, that's not really a big number of things to go through. Those articles are really mostly pointers to other stuff. So there's literally thousands of links to other material, some of it within CALLERLAB, some of it outside of CALLERLAB. But basically we're trying to create a place where you can link out to everything we know about that has to do with sharing the experience of square dancing. And these are the kinds of things that are out there that we can link to. There's these things we call winning ways stories. Somebody has done something that they found worked, and they have a story about the context of what they did, how they did it, what their success was, and the results of that. There's tons of documents and books, video and audio files, media articles. We've got a big list of articles that have appeared in newspapers or TV clips in the news and that sort of thing. And of course, education sessions. A lot of these sessions over the years that have been recorded are available on YouTube, and we have indexes to them all. Promotional materials. So there's examples of flyers, some of them of which are set up as templates, so you can use them and stick your own club information in, and tons more. You know, whenever you see much more, you know, it's not an exhaustive list. Just out of interest, what have people been looking at? Here's a list of the 10 most viewed articles in the past year And if you look at that carefully, you'll see that 7 of the 10 have to do with SSD, which gives you some idea of how firmly people are grasping this new entry program that we have. Another one that is very popular is this CALLERLAB program documents is a collection of all the program-related publications. So by program I mean mainstream plus, you know, that's a program. So all the definitions associated with the program, the call lists for the programs, the teaching tips, the standard applications for the program, all of that stuff is collected by program under that document. So I'm not going to bore you with really explaining this chart, but this just shows the views per month is the number of times somebody hit one of our pages, and the unique visitors per month is the number of individuals who visited without counting how often they may have visited. It's just the number of unique visitors that we had. And so you can see that 2020, of course, when the pandemic hit, had some fluctuations. 2021 was kind of weird because this is where we did a lot of our new program development. The statistics gathering stopped because we were messing with the innards of the knowledge base. So these numbers don't really mean anything. And actually, we stopped it entirely for a month. And then these numbers are sort of partial months. But you can see where we're starting in 2022. Things are starting to ramp up. So again, we can kind of see what's going on in the square dance world just by watching those graphs. You can get an idea of what people are looking at and how many people are looking at things. So I look at those curves as being kind of hopeful. Okay, so let's have a look at what the knowledge base actually looks like. There we go. Hopefully this will work. Actually, it would have worked better if I had connected to the internet. I knew I was getting something when I was setting up.
You probably did, and it just kicked you off. That's what it does to me.
Is it going to make me put the password in again? Should. Ta-da! Okay. So this is the home page of the knowledge base. And as you can see, the tagline under the title there, CALLERLAB knowledge base, sharing ideas and experiences for the betterment of square dancing. That's really what it's all about. It's a place to share information and ideas that we think can help make square dancing better. And one of the things I keep harping on with this is, I didn't make this stuff up. All the content in there came from somebody else, somebody like you. And I really depend on people contributing material that we can get up in the knowledge base. That doesn't mean that you have to write articles yourself. Just tell me about things, send me information, I'll work with you to build an article. An awful lot of what's in there, as I said, is really just references to stuff that is already built. So if you find something on another site somewhere, or you discover somebody that's doing something neat, tell me about it, and I can create the appropriate entries in the knowledge base for it. How many of you have you actually used the knowledge base? I just want to know how much time I need to spend kind of. So you got questions, I can tell, right?
Well, I need to tell you the purpose of my being here, but I don't know when that is the appropriate time.
Okay, well let me I'll do a quick pass through this, and then we'll take questions and we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
Okay, and of course when we do questions, we'd like you to do it on the mic so that we get all the comments recorded. So when you look at this page, first of all, those of you who have been looking at the knowledge base for a while will notice it looks somewhat different than it did even a year ago. So we've tried to spiffy it up a little bit, make it a little more visually appealing. But really, the major part of the work that we were doing was to make it more presentable on tablets and phones. This has not occurred to me, because being an old guy, the laptop is as modern as I got. The idea of looking stuff up on my phone still strikes me as kind of strange. But Patty Green and Chris lobbied hard for changing the way we were presenting pages so that they would be acceptable on a phone. And along the way, we managed to, I think, make it look a lot more visually appealing. The first thing to be aware of is that there's this section here on the sidebar called Navigation Information. And it explains in gory, excruciating detail how to go about finding things on the knowledge base. So the gory, excruciating detail is under all these buttons. And if you're having trouble finding something, the first thing to do is make sure that there isn't some avenue within the knowledge base that you haven't explored before you come asking me. The few questions that I do get, it's usually something that's right there in the instructions. So, as we used to say in the technical world, read the manual. So just to show you what's there, under how to use this knowledge base, as I said, is chapter and verse on how it's organized and how you can go about finding things. There's three main ways you can find things. You can either go through one of these main categories that are on the top menu. So these are sort of the main sections within the knowledge base. So the dancers section has information that's kind of directed to dancers, or we think will be of interest to dancers, or is about dancers. Callers, same thing. It's directed at callers. It's technical information that callers might find useful. Social connections is the new one. I'll go back to that and talk about it in some detail. CALLERLAB information is information about CALLERLAB, the organization. So if you want to know who's on the Board of Governors, or if you want to know what the history of the conventions is, or something like that, that'll be under CALLERLAB information. Then there's the usual useful links and stuff that most websites have. How to get a hold of us if you want to. There's this special page on COVID information, which frankly I think we should probably take out now. It's been a bit fallow for a long time. Everybody knows everything they need to about COVID, I'm sure. So,
Except the future.
Except the future, yeah. So under how to use this knowledge base, it talks about what's in the categories at the top, and I'm not going to read all this stuff to you. I want you to go to the knowledge base and find your way around. That's why there's no handout. You know, if I had to explain it through a handout, then I have failed miserably. So you should be able to go and find your way around. It explains what all those categories are about. Explains what the stuff on the sidebar is about. And the first thing it talks about is search. The search on the sidebar, it ain't as sophisticated as Google in a lot of ways, but in one way it is. You can do Boolean searches, which you can't do in Google, or at least not with the standard Google search. So there are explanations there of how you can put in your search terms so that you can either exclude terms or you can guarantee that an individual article has that term in it. So if you put 3 terms in, you can say, this one has to be there, this one, if it's there, I like it, but it doesn't have to be. And you know, there's ways to do that. So read the information on how to search before you come and tell me that you couldn't find something. It explains what a tag is and how it differs from a search. Again, I'm not going to try and explain it to you right now. And then it gives you some other navigation notes so that if you pull up a huge page that's got all kinds of information on it, for instance, one of the indexes to the audio recordings, there's probably 1,400 entries on that page. So if you want to search that page, you can't use the knowledge base search, because that searches the entire knowledge base. You have to use your browser search to search that particular page for some text. And I can show you how that's done if you'd like. There's this section here on what we mean by article types. You'll see when you look at an article that there's an article type right at the top. Well, what does that tell you? Basically, it tells you what the form of the information is. So a collection, for instance, is a collection of all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like a summary of a bunch of different things that it'll point you to. A document is, as you might expect, a document or a book or something like that. Idea is just a little squib that says, you know, somebody figured out that if you do this, you know, it might have this effect. Presentation, so if you have a recording of a presentation like this, it would be under presentation. So again, you can read these for yourself, and hopefully they are self-explanatory. The one I will touch on quickly is the Winning Ways story. What we mean by that is it's a sort of a formatted description of experiences that somebody had where they, in a certain situation, they did certain things and they got these results. And this is why they think it worked. So again, if you're looking for how do I go about recruiting, you'll find Winning Ways stories on recruiting new dancers. You'll find Winning Ways stories on promotions that worked. You'll find them in all kinds of things. We've got 70-some Winning Ways stories in there now. I can't remember just how many there are. And then finally, at the bottom of that navigation page is all the tags and categories that exist on the site with the explanations of what they are and how many articles are associated with that. So if you're wondering, well, you know, what area might I have to look at to find information on a certain thing? You could say, well, what does TV mean? Well, it means square dance items that have been on TV or prepared for TV. So we have clips in there, some of which were like a TV news item on something that happened at a convention somewhere where they recorded some dancing, and you know that happens at a lot of the nationals, right? The local TV station comes in and they record some dancing, and some of those clips are good. Some of them we really wish they hadn't broadcast that, but that's what that is. So hopefully the descriptions are descriptive. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the home page now, just because I like that picture. So that's navigation information. If you try, you know, going in and finding something and you can't find what you're looking for, go and review the navigation information to see if maybe there's just a different way to get at it. It's there, but your search didn't work. That's the most common thing people do. They hit the search bar, they search on some terms, and one of two things happen. Either they don't find anything, which may mean that there isn't anything in the knowledge base about that, or they get tons of stuff and they don't want to wade through it. So certainly if you get the tons of stuff that you don't want to wade through, what's typically happened is that one of the search words that you put in there is something like well actually the wouldn't be picked up. There's certain words that they don't, you know, search just ignores. But for instance, if you put in something on dancing, you're going to get, you know, hundreds of hits on dancing. But if you put in something about, if you put in, say, square hyphen dancing, which the hyphen means don't include dancing, it would exclude all the articles that have the word dancing in them. So there are ways that you can kind of tweak your search so that it gets closer to what you want. But even then, you might not find what you're looking for searching, because the words that you have in your head that you think describe this thing may not be the same words that the author used or that I used when I categorized it. So if search doesn't seem to work, go look at this tag cloud. So this is a list of all the tags in the knowledge base. So again, a tag is it's like a sticky note that we put on the article that says this article bears on this subject in some way. It may not be exclusively about that subject, but it has some material on that subject. And if you hover your mouse over one of the search terms, you can see just down at the bottom, or at just under the mouse hand there, you might not be able to read it at the back, it says 75 topics. So in choreography, there are 75 articles that deal with choreography in some way. Now, some of them aren't exclusively about choreography. They might mention it as, you know, a section of the book or the document or whatever it is. But they have something to do with choreography. If you go to that article, you will definitely find some reference to choreography. And that's true for each one of these. You know, health benefits, we've got 18 topics about health, articles about health benefits. Promotion is a big one, 97 articles that have to do with promotion. If you click on one of those, you get a page that has all the articles that have that tag on them. And at the top of that page, it describes, this is what this tag means, in case you weren't really sure. Sometimes the words are not as descriptive as I'd like them to be. And this page has an area at the top here that allows you to filter the articles even more. So if you scroll down, you can see, yeah, there's a lot of articles. And what you're looking at there is just the title and a little précis of the article. And you can see there's 4 continuation pages. We've got so many of them. So if you're thinking, well, that's still too much stuff that I don't want to filter my way through about promotion, you can filter it by a category, which I'll tell you right now probably won't be too helpful because we don't have too many categories. But maybe, you know, that would be what you want. So you could say, well, we're looking at promotional material that's directed to callers. You'll notice there's a lot more directed to dancers than there is to callers. So let's look at callers just because it's a smaller number. And that automatically cuts down this list that you get presented down to the 16 that had to do with callers. You can also filter it by another tag. So if we look at another tag, we could say, well, it's something that's directed to callers that also has to do with, say, health benefits. I'll click on that, and it filters it down to these 2 things. Which, fine, there's stuff in there that has something to do with health benefits, has something to do with promotion. So that's kind of how you can work your way down through the morass of material that's there. So I urge you to kind of experiment with that kind of stuff as you're working your way through. If you want to look at what's new in the knowledge base, recent articles just shows you the 10 most recent things that have been published. So this Caller School in the Box is the last thing that I put in there. That's material from Daryl Clendenin, where he's basically recorded a little mini Caller School. It's the PowerPoint presentation narrated with moving pictograms and whatnot that covers a lot of the material that is there in a Caller School, that just maybe in a way that they can go back and refer to. So again, I'm not going to go through that. If you're wondering what do people look at, here's a popular searches. And this is, it's hard to say what you're going to find in here because the time that it looks at can vary. So if you're wondering why this one is so big, that's just because of a kludgy thing that I put in there to enable us to find all the things that are documents. So that I wish there was a way I could get rid of that being displayed, because it's really an internal thing, but don't worry about it. But you can, if you just click on one of these, it just repeats this search for you. But it gives you an idea of what people are looking for. But if you, for instance, look at this one, sets in order. So if you just typed it in that way, the word order appears in tons of things. The word in appears in tons of things. The word sets appears in tons of things. So you're going to get a huge hit list that has nothing to do with the Sets in Order magazine, if that's what we're looking for. And then lastly, there's a most viewed in 30 days. gives you the 10 most frequently viewed articles in the last 30 days. So that chart that I showed you when I was doing my slides that had the last year, it's really this thing expanded to a year. But down at the bottom of it, you see there's this see more thing. So if you click on that, it takes you to a page that shows you a bunch of snapshots of 90-day periods that give you the 50 most frequently viewed over that period. So if you're interested in the history of what things have been doing, you can go and look and see what articles people are looking at. So here's the 90 days ending April the 5th, which is when I did this. And it lists all the articles in order, and you can see how many times they got hit in this 90-day period, and you can see what they are. And if you see one that interests you, like if this Cal Campbell's Singing Call collection, for instance, looks interesting to you, you can just click on that, and it will take you to an article about his Singing Call collection, which
Is that it?
this, I'm not sure if this is, let me just see where this goes. Whether this goes to the archive or not.
No, that looks like it goes to the resource. Go ahead, click on
Yeah, no, this goes to the archive, yeah.
it. That's-
So, yeah,
Okay.
a lot of Cal Campbell, who passed away, unfortunately, just recently, as he spent the last couple of years of his life kind of gathering together all the stuff that he had produced and pushing it out to the Internet Archive as a place to preserve it. And he was kind enough to keep telling me about it so that I could point to the stuff that he had out there. So this is an example of
So
that.
that goes to
So-
directly his section, does it?
Yeah, so if I click on Basic Part 1, it should take us to Basics, oh no. Oh, it downloads it, okay. This was a bad example. It is on the archive, but because it's a spreadsheet, that particular thing is actually a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. It downloads it, but it's coming from the archive, and you can tell that by just hovering over the link. And if you look down at the bottom here, you probably can't read it because it's all fuzzy, but it's actually on the Internet Archive that it's coming from. There's other things in here of his that we can look at so that you can see. Okay, so what was I doing?
It's just about time.
Yeah. So just before I turn it over to Dottie, I just wanted to show you this new section on social connections because it looks slightly different. When the Social Connections Committee got going, they started first gathering material and then generating material about the social connections aspects of our activity. So they are all gathered together under this social connections section. And the thing to keep in mind is if it's in the social connections section, the articles in there deal maybe not absolutely exclusively with social connections material, but it is by far it is definitely the focus of the material. There may be a little bit of extra stuff wrapped around it, but by far it's looking at the social connection stuff. So there's things like this, Breaking Bread and Building Connections, which talks about how we treat food at a dance can either boost social connections or it can get in the way of social connections. And this is a collection of articles that Claudia Littlefair, who produces a great newsletter out of Alberta called Alberta Chatter, put this together. So we show her article. I'm not going to go into it at this point. But each of these articles focuses on the social connections aspects. Each of them also has some sub-categories associated with it. So you can filter these articles. There's not enough of them now that it's a problem navigating your way through them, but there's going to be. You just, at what we've done at this convention, I've probably got easily another half dozen to 10 or so new articles that are going to be going in here. So you can then further filter it by going through these sub-activities. So like new dancer sessions, what are the social bonding types of things you can do at a new dancer session, like an intro or the first dance or two that you have. All the ideas from the contests that the Social Connections Committee have been running have been gathered together in this article, Ideas from Social Connections Contest. So we had some stuff already that we pulled into here and made sure it's subcategorized properly, and we've got new stuff coming in all the time. And as you can see, Mike Seastrom is the chair of the Social Connections Committee, and they've been working hard at this convention to generate more material. So I'm going to turn things over to my co-presenter, Dottie Welch, who will talk about the teaching resource and the dancing resource. And she has a handout, so I will, before we turn things over, are there any
Are you together?
questions?
Would you like to?
It'd probably be better if we wait until Dottie's finished, and then, you know, if there's any questions, we'll take them all at once at the end, because some of this
Somebody
stuff.
has a specific question on this.
Yeah, if you've got
So-
No, I
That's
just.
the back.
So can you get to this directly from the CALLERLAB website? Is there a spot in the CALLERLAB website?
There is, but it doesn't hit you in the head.
Okay.
You kind of have to hunt for it a little bit. But just think about the CALLERLAB website is callerlab.org, right? So just stick knowledge in front of that, and you go right to the homepage.
Yeah.
That's the easy thing. That's easier than hunting for it. And then, I mean, it is there if you know where it is. It's not a big deal to find it, but if you're not familiar with the CALLERLAB site, it can be kind of an issue. So
So,
do
since we're
you want
here-
one of them?
Well, I don't, since we're here,
Okay.
and we navigate from here to the other ones, to mine.
Yes, we can. Okay, let's see how we might find, which one do you want? The teaching resource? I think that's
The
probably
one in front is the teaching.
the teaching resource. So let's suppose that you were looking for the online teaching resource. You could go to the tag cloud and look for teaching dancers. But that, you can tell by the size of the letters there that that's a big one. Teaching dancers. And so how might we,
So CALLERLAB for starters, and I see right down here, at the bottom of the page, CALLERLAB online teaching.
CALLERLAB online teaching resource. So what I did is I went into the teaching dancers tag. That would be a logical place to go when you're looking for teaching information. And then I filtered by CALLERLAB because it's produced by CALLERLAB. And if you know that you're looking for the CALLERLAB site, that would be a logical thing to do. Say yes, please. It would be a logical thing to do. That doesn't seem strange to any of you that we took that route. So you click on the online teaching resource. Now what you will get, it won't take you to the online teaching resource. It'll take you to an article that tells you what the online teaching resource is. That article has a link to the online teaching resource. There you
There
are.
it is. So, this is
Microphone.
another, yes, right, thank you.
You know how to turn it on. Actually, I think it just turned on.
So,
Say words, so.
hello, test, 1, 2, 3.
Are you hearing that?
No.
No?
Off the Zoom.
Oh.
Yeah, it should be, that's red. Doesn't look like, test, 1, 2.
It was already on when I picked it up, so maybe the battery's dead. This one was turned off, so.
Wait a second, let me try it, let's try this, test.
No. It's green.
Test. That one, this one's working.
That's not.
Yeah. So this one may be dead. Mr. AV guy?
Test, 1, 2.
There you
All right, that's better. So what we've got here is another spot on the CALLERLAB website, which contains another, a lot of people are referring to this whole thing as the knowledge base, but really, at the moment, there's 3 pieces to this thing. Barry's was developed separately from the teaching one, and that was developed separately from the dancing one, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So there's kind of 3 places here that certainly I have no objections to the whole thing being described as knowledge base, because it certainly is a source of knowledge, but really there's three separate pieces. So what we've got here is something that is intended to help a caller who is teaching a class or wants to do some workshops on something in, at the moment, Basic Part 1, Basic Part 2, Mainstream or Plus, as you can see across the top. It should say Main Plus down below, but I don't think it does at the moment. There's something wrong with that page and I have to fix it. But so we'll show you what's happened. So I'd like you to click on Basic Part 1 for me if you would. So there's a kind of landing page for Basic Part 1, which lists all the calls down the left-hand side in the teaching order. Let's just scroll down, give you and then we have this table across the right-hand side with the same words being repeated over and over. And what's happening here, for instance, if you decided you wanted to look up pass-through, you've got categories that you can look at. And for every call, it's the same categories. So that's a way to get to the different pieces. So let's look at pass-through under define, which stands for definition. And what you find when you go there is exactly what is in the basic definitions for the call pass-through. So the underlying idea for this part of the documentation or the resource is that once upon a time, there was a big brown notebook that callers clasped firmly in their arm and carried everywhere that had this kind of information on paper. And it was a wonderful thing, and I used it as a resource for a long time. But gradually, a lot of that information has gone out of date, and the call lists have adjusted and shifted, and so it's become harder to find, although I think you can still purchase a copy of that if you want. But it seemed to me that it was time to move into the modern world and get this on the internet. So what's happened here is I've taken the concept of that book and turned it into this resource. And so the idea is that a new caller or somebody who's beginning to teach a class in a level that they've not programmed, they've not taught before, can go to this and say, okay, in order to teach pass-through, I have to know what the definition is, so here's the definition, they can read through it, and once they're satisfied with that, we can go up to the links at the top and link to standard. So in this case, the link is all going to be connected to pass-through. So in this, under standard, this is what you would find if you had the standard applications document and you looked up pass-through in it. Same information is here. It doesn't look in quite the same format, but same information. And the next one is an analyze, which, go ahead, is the equivalent of a call analysis sheet. For those of you who have gone that, I hope somewhere along the line some caller has presented you with a caller analysis sheet and said, you should make these. Have you ever wondered what the answers are, or might be? Well, here's a place to look. So these are all the same kinds of questions that you might have there. And then the next section is modules, various and sundry kinds, equivalents, zeros, get-ins, get-outs, transitions if they're appropriate, or conversions, whatever. And then the next section is teaching, where we have the teaching tips. There are teaching tips documents that came originally from an intercession at a long ago convention. I can't remember which one, but they've been around for a while, and there's a separate document, but this is extracted from it. And then there's some additional teaching suggestions that added later, quick quote that you might use when you were trying to describe this to the students quickly, and then a whole bunch of choreography figures. They're intended to be both a pattern version with a resolution at home with your partner, and if you don't do that, you can do this one instead, which gives you a singing resolution to your corner. So they're based more or less in the kind of order that you might teach them, from the most simple starting point to as deep as you might want to go and still stick with your standard applications. And let's go back to the top so that we can go to the next one, which says other. And other is kind of a catch-all spot to put other kinds of dances that use this call that you might want to use as drill or to make your experience interesting and fun. In this case, we have a Sicilian circle figure that has pass-through in it. And then the final one is a place to put applications that are not standard, that are what would be considered extended applications. No attempt has been made to address all possible extended applications, but rather to show a few things that you might do if you want to do a workshop that pushed the envelope a little bit into that extended category. So that's what's there, and a similar kind of progression is present for every call on the Basic Part 1, Basic Part 2, Mainstream, and Plus lists. And we're discussing with the Advanced Program Committee whether or not they want to continue on and do something similar for Advanced. But that'll be a little while before it's up there. So, right on the front page of this thing, can we look at the reference documents page here? No, over to the right here, yeah. So this page is a direct link to the documents that were used to create. So for instance, I said we were using the basic definitions and the basic standard applications. Well, if you wanted to see the original documents, then that would take you to the main CALLERLAB website and under the dance resources on the main website. The only way back here is to use your back arrow on your computer if you do that.
You want me to go there? Or?
No, that's fine. So, and the CALLERLAB website would also take you to the home page. So that's what's here. And before we leave this, let me ask if anybody has questions about what you might find. Yep.
Actually, mine's more a maintenance question. You want to hear it? Okay, just a more of a maintenance question. I see the reference documents. Jim Wass from Riverdale, Maryland. I see the reference documents point to places where a reference document lives. So if the reference document changes, your link is fine, your reference is fine. When I'm in one of the program lists, Basic Part 1, Part 2, Mainstream Plus, and I'm looking at a definition, it appears to be the HTML rather than a pointer to something or sucking information from somewhere. So the maintenance of this is going to require somebody that runs this thing to be on the distribution list for any definition change, any standard application change, etc., etc.
Correct. And you're looking at her.
Anyway, I call that a weak link. You can just...
Well, yes and no. Yes and no, because only parts of this come from those other documents. And to go directly to, say, the basic definitions and extract a little piece from it, if the basic definitions are updated, the link's gone. So there's maintenance going to be required no matter what.
Yeah, I understand why. I'm just raising the point.
Yeah. So, but all this stuff with the choreography and modules, that's unique to this. Okay, that's not coming from anywhere else. And yes, indeed, we just updated our CALLERLAB website. And guess what? I spent a long time last summer getting everything on here updated. Yes, indeed.
I saw what you did last summer, yeah.
Okay. So, any other questions about this?
And I'd just like
Anybody
to say
using
that
this in any way?
No, not yet,
Yes. Anybody think they might find it useful?
probably, but
I
I
hope
have
so.
to find out.
I hope so. So,
I mean, one of the problems, as we discussed in another session, is that people that have been teaching for years have already collected a lot of this information together, and they have it somewhere where they know where everything is and what's going on. So it's really directed at the newer caller who, or somebody who's lost their reference material, so that they can go to one place and find all this information that used to be scattered all over the place in all kinds of different documents and websites. It took hours and hours to find this kind of information before. And Dottie has typed most of this stuff in with her own 10 fingers. You know, and as the curator of the knowledge base, I just take stuff that people give me and I put it out. It doesn't really take that long. But Dottie's had to basically create it.
well, Pamela helped, his wife. She helped with a lot of the typing. But the idea is he said, newer callers are faced with a huge job the first year they teach a class. A huge job. And it seemed to me that the least we could do was put the information they needed in an easily accessible place. Because it's a big enough job to figure out exactly what the definition says and exactly how to explain it and what choreography might I use and find a singing call that it pairs with. There's plenty of work there trying to make the life a little bit easier and the process a little bit smoother and consistent. So that's the reason. Okay, so that's one. Now, so this is obviously aimed at the basic, mainstream, and plus caller at the moment. Maybe advanced in the future. Now, the other online resource that we're going to talk about came out of the community and traditional dance world, and a need there to document the dances that we use in that world. So now, if we want to get back there, where would you taking us? We want to get back to the knowledge base?
So I've taken you back to the knowledge base.
Okay.
So you can see how, if you knew that this site existed that had all this community dance stuff on it, how would you find it? How do you think you would find it? So you're planning a party night, and you want to find material that you can use for a party night.
Well,
So give me an idea how you might approach it.
I have to type in knowledge.callup.org
Yup,
and
that gets
find
you-
your way through this mess. I'm sorry, I call it mess, but for me, it's a mess right now.
All right,
But
so
maybe I will find it's not a mess, but I have to
did you...
show it to.
Do you remember from the seminar we just had that we talked about dances.calllab.org?
I didn't go to the initial seminar
Okay.
yesterday.
1-2 word search.
The one over the weekend.
So what did you put in?
I put in party night and I put them in quotes, so.
So that it took the
was
phrase.
more likely to get that precise
So-
phrase.
so-
Repeat for the tape.
This is at the Community Dance Leaders Seminar over the weekend. Remember we talked about this dancers.calllab.org resource?
Okay,
Those are the key words to get to that one. If you just went straight without going to the knowledge base, okay? But in the meantime, they're going to put in party nights.
Singular.
Singular. Probably doesn't matter much, but
It will for this.
it might, yeah, it might.
This is gonna put that hit at the top.
So, as Jim pointed out, the top left entry there is Community Dance Party Night Resources, which doesn't say it's the dancer's website, but if you're looking for party night, community dance stuff, that would be a logical place for you to explore. And sure enough, if you go to this, it tells you what you're looking at. It's the list of community dance resources and documents. And one of the first item in that list is the CALLERLAB Dances Resource website. But there's also others in there. So there's the Lloyd Shaw Foundation site, which has a bunch of stuff related to one night party type stuff, community dance journals it'll point you to, Country Dance and Song Society. So it gives you links to all kinds of things that are related to that and have information on that area and explains what it is. So let's go look at the Dancers Resource because that's what we were
There we are.
exploring for.
So, as I said, the purpose of this one was to find a place that we could gather together all the different kinds of dances that we use in the community dance world. And this one is arranged a little bit more in the way the knowledge base is arranged, in that we have over here dance categories. So big categories: circle dances, circle mixers, contours. It's hard for me to read this here. Line dances and others. Well, okay, so under contours we have alternate dubles and we have couples facing and mescalances and so forth. So these are all contours. These are different kinds of circle mixers. Those are different kinds of circle dances that are not mixers and so forth. And down below this list. There should be a tag box here somewhere. Yeah, and we saw it's a similar kind of tag thing. I'm not sure that Barry said this, but if you haven't figured this out, the fact that right and left through is in great big letters means there's a lot of references, and that 2-star promenade is in tiny print means there's less.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back up again a minute. On this landing page that we come to, we have various other ways to search. So one of the other ways to search is we have the dance resources table, and what that basically is another way of getting at this information. Go ahead there if you want for a minute.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is a sortable table, which means you can click on the top and order it alphabetically or numerically by the sort, but just leave it where it is for the moment. So this gives you, it depends on what you're looking for. If you know that you're looking for a dance by Calvin Campbell that you're not sure what its name is, then you would search by Calvin. If you know the name, you'd search on the left, and if you know for whether it's a contour or a circle, you could search in here. And this gives you a little bit of clue as to how hard the dance is. So if you look up at the top there, if it only has circles and maybe do-sa-do in it, I can't quite see what's in the top level. Yeah, circles, do-sa-do, promenade, and back, forward and back. Then it would have a 0, 1 on it, which means they're as simple as they get. And as you work down, they get additional complications because of color.
If I was interested in finding something about, like, say, Appalachian Trail Mixer, is there somewhere in the start of this forest of information that I can type in Appalachian Trail Mixer and find out all the occurrence of the term? Because that's what I want.
Okay, well, you're finding, if you knew the name, you're seeing it there for the first time, but let's go back. Can we go back to the home page again? Okay, so presumably, if you know it's Appalachian Trail Mixer, you know it's a mixer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over here to circle mixers.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
so go back
And
to
we-
the page so I did, okay.
Yeah, and that's right. And we've got two categories here. One of them says using square dance calls, and the other with some footwork. Well, if you're not sure, you're probably going to search both, but let's try using square dance calls. Now, you see a little bit of a list here, and you have to scroll down to see if that, there it is. Okay, so there it is. There, and then it says a little comment, there are several quick changes in direction, so it requires a good focus and quick reaction time, which is a comment about level of difficulty. And if you want to know more, then you click on this, right up in here.
Okay, the title.
Yep. And it takes you to a page that shows how you would prop the dance and a description of the action. And if you want to download an RTF file, that blue link way up at the top there, this one up here, would download the link for you. The link to the, it would download the RTF file to your computer so that you can print it or do whatever you like to do with it. So, not too hard if you have some clues.
But what about if I want to find the history of it, or some variations on the music
Scroll down a
and
little bit.
sources?
Scroll down to music. So what information I had about it is here. There's the choreographer. This is a little bit about usage. And I might not have had a whole lot of history about it, because most of these, you know, okay.
Sometimes you do, and you.
If I had it, it would be there.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
good.
So there's quite a bit of information tucked in there, and we tried to make it as accessible as we could.
So that's.
And I wouldn't be surprised, truthfully, if you were to type in Appalachian Trail Mixer, maybe with a square dance or something, that Google would go,
Yeah, you,
Right,
I'm sure for one, that's a famous one, right? So I'm sure you'd get hits on Google.
right.
Something that, I've used this a number of times for party nights, and I find, like, I look at these descriptions of the dance, and if I don't already know the dance, I can't really translate that into the motion in my head. So then I go to YouTube, and type in application trail mixer, and you'll probably find a bunch of video recordings of people either teaching or doing that mixer, and you can see how it relates to. The only problem with that is sometimes
They're not quite the same.
they're not quite the same,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but at least it gives you an idea what the action of the mixer is supposed, or what the dance is supposed to be.
Jim?
I searched on Appalachian, Jim Wass again from Riverdale, Maryland. I searched on Appalachian Trail Mixer, and I got hits on trail mix recipes, trail gear,
For sure.
but the first hit was Appalachian Trail Mixer CALLERLAB Dance Resources. This is the
Oh,
Bing.
wow.
This is the Bing search. Apparently we are well indexed, and the search engines are starting to see these things. So several times, actually, in the past few days, I've done a search on something with a browser, with a search engine, and it hit the CALLERLAB knowledge base, either the dance
My
resource
husband
or the
says
other.
that he likes much better DuckDuckGo because
Yeah.
it's much less intrusive, let's
Much
say.
less advertising and intrusion, yeah, so.
Yeah,
So,
I'm almost convinced.
Let me try
Not
Duck.
yet.
I'll try DuckDuckGo the same way.
well, whatever, yeah, hopefully, I mean, I usually use Google directly, and I'm fairly successful at finding hits too, so, you know, you don't have to go you certainly don't have to go via the knowledge base. If you know that you want a dance that might be in here, just go straight to dances.callellab.org, and,
Same result.
Yeah, good.
yeah, so we've tried to we've got over 220 dances in here at the moment, I think, and actually it's more than that, because in some cases there's this, and here's a variation, and here's another variation, and I'm not counting those separate variations. So there's a lot in there, and there's more to go in. I've got a, ongoing process of keeping adding them to it. So I think it's way more accessible than it used to be in the past to find this kind of thing. And there's also links there from various to other places that also have other dances. So other questions, anybody?
I would like to state why I'm here.
Yes,
Could
please.
could we get you on the mic?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we have a dead mic, so Roddy will have to share.
Elise Rosenfield from Ithaca, New York. I'm the wife of Richard Rosenfield Caller, but I'm also here for a totally different purpose. And since in the last 10 years, I have been involved as the editor and creator and publisher, and I do from A to Z of the Coordinator, which is a publication that appeared 3 to 4 times a year. Now it's three times a year, but it's dead because it's COVID. It was about 20 to 22 page small booklet that would have everything. Of course, this died with COVID. The last publication, I think, was September 2020. But I also have a corresponding website, which was much less involved, would have general schedule of all the clubs, all the flyers, not in color because it's black and white publication. But the website would have the flyers in color, and you could download it and all that. What I'm now trying to do is not to restore the publication. It's just too much work. Before COVID, we were still 7 clubs, and there probably will be less. So I'm not going to do a whole publication anymore. It's too much work. But I would like to upgrade the website to be more interesting, a better resource to the dancers, because now there are much less dancers who really want something printed. So I can convince them to access the website and look, but I don't want the website to be overwhelming.
So I would like to have a few articles. I would like for them to have all they need. But I'm not sure exactly what I should change or add, or I can ask the dancers. Chances are they're not going to tell me.
Okay, so both this website and the teaching website are definitely aimed at callers.
Yes.
That's not to say you might not have a dancer who has a little bit of aspiration of maybe being a caller, or has gotten dragged in somewhere and suddenly finds they need to teach a dance to children or some such thing. You know, very, very new callers, this might be of great assistance. But the ordinary dancer, unless they are trying to learn something and they need to see the actual choreography, is probably not going to want to go here. But Barry's has sections definitely that apply to dancers.
I'm not entirely sure what the question is that you're asking. Are you asking how can you organize it so that it's simple for people to find some specific thing? Or
How I can improve it and enrich it, but not too much.
Repeat the
So
comment.
it's just the new research.
So, for instance, perhaps, I'm thinking this is a possibility, she could have a link that would take them to a part of the knowledge base that deals with publicity.
is that sort of what you're looking at?
I will
The
try.
problem you're facing is anybody who builds a website that's intended to convey knowledge to people wrestles with this balance. If you make it simple and easy to navigate, it's often too sparse. People, the stuff they want isn't there. If you've got all kinds of stuff for people to find, then the mechanism for getting to it starts to get complicated, so people decide it's too hard. I can't find anything in there because it's too much of a labyrinth. So we're always walking that fine line to, a lot of what our knowledge-based reorganization was about was because we had let it become too kludgy and illogical in a lot of people's minds, so we had to, quote, clean it up. It took months of work on the part of Chris and I to come up with a kind of a new format, which was really just an adjustment of what we already had. If we'd been starting from scratch, it might have taken even longer. So you're asking a complicated question. It's not something that there's a formula for. You know, we can just say, well, you do these three things and
Just
it's going to
trying
be
to
wonderful.
figure out who to ask and where to go, if I can find some leads.
Well, one of the things about our square dance activity is that there's people in it that have expertise in just about any area you might want to find. And I'm sure there's people in your dance community that have built a website or may do it for a living. And the trick is for your purposes, if you can tap into somebody like that and ask them questions as you're trying to understand what you need to do, that will help guide you. But the judgment about what's too hard, what's too simple, and what's too much, and what's not enough,
Yeah.
that's all judgment that you'll have to figure out.
I have built this website myself, and it was very elaborate. I have put together this website, which is now much more simple because I had to remove so many things that don't exist anymore. But I would like to restore this website into a better source of information, maybe a few articles that could be good for the women dancers.
So maybe a place to begin is to think in your own mind about what kind of articles your particular dancer population might be interested in, and yourself do a little bit of research on the knowledge base to find those links
Will do.
that go to the kinds of places you would like to direct your dancers.
Is there someone you know in the CALLERLAB community I could ask once I find particular questions.
What,
Or just
what do you
walk
need?
my way through the website.
Okay, so what exactly do you want to ask? What question do you
If
want to
I-
ask?
I'm not sure, but if I don't know the answer,
Yeah, I'm hearing, this is Jim Wass, Riverdale, Maryland, 20 years IT, mostly at the front end as a business process analyst. And anybody, I'm speaking to anybody now, not just to Lisa and her problem, anybody that wants to build a resource like this or a smaller one needs to decide what is. That is to say, what are your dancers going to need? Write down those things and have somebody who knows about this help you organize those thoughts. Whether they are static articles about kind of like encyclopedia articles that are something that's going to remain for a while that people might want to know, or whether they are dynamic or current articles, things about what's going on right now, what went on recently, or what's going on next week. In addition to the announcements, it sounded like you had some schedule stuff. You used the words flyers. That to me implies when you have a flyer, that's an announcement of a future event. So that's a combination of providing information about an event as well as a scheduling, calendaring type of function. That's what I'm hearing right now from you. And you need to decide if those are the things that you want to happen. Then you can more intelligently speak with a consultant who will say, okay, if you're going to have this and that and that and this kind of a capability is what you might want to employ to get there. So personally, I'll be happy to help you write that list, but that's as far as I go. I don't build things for people, not right now anyway. I have, but not right now.
Dana, are you here to take us out?
I have done all those things.
Oh, you fixed the
I
mic.
just removed a lot. I just will have to use my own judgment. I know how to
Okay.
do all those things.
Yeah, okay, so
It's
we're-
just that if it's missing there,
You need-
and I should know it's how to grow it in an interesting way.
right,
Because-
so we do have some resources, and let us direct you to some of those people.
Okay, I will ask you guys.
Anybody else here? Wait,
I'll ask one. Wayne Wade, National Executive Committee. I noticed that when you brought up your knowledge page there, or I brought it up on my phone, that there wasn't a link to the NSDC or to the NEC specifically. Is there a reason we're not, or other than what we had tried, or?
No, there's no reason why not, but let me just check on something here. If we got it under useful links. So under useful links, there's organizations. Is the NEC in there? Doesn't look like it.
So how do I get on there?
Tell me about it. You just told me. Tell me, send me an email just to remind me, because that's sort of where my inbox is. Send me an email with the URL
I
that
have
you'd
the
like it
URL
directed to.
bookmarked on my computer.
Well, yeah, but that may not be the one that he wants directed to. So, and then that'll go in this table, okay? And if you wanted to give us a little information about what the NEC is and, you know, how it relates to the individual conventions and that sort of thing, I think a lot of people might be interested in what those relationships are. We could have an article about the NEC and the continuing conventions, and we could have the history of the conventions up there. You know, there's lots of things we can do with it, so I'm quite happy to work with you to do
Right,
that.
well, there's a lot of information already there, and it has, if you go to the NEC, then it has links to current conventions which change.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you probably wouldn't want them listed here because they do change.
yeah, no.
So, but I will get you that.
Yeah.
And
Barry at clasper.ca.
you mentioned something earlier, excuse me. You said Square Dance, and you go look for Square Dance, you get 1 million results, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said something about putting square hyphen dance? Did
Oh,
I hear that wrong, or?
no,
Does
well,
that
let me just show
define
you what
the-
I'm talking about.
Well, that was search for square.
Right, you
We're
want
not
the
searching
square
for
dance, but you don't want all dance. Did that
So-
define square?
Let me
as-
just show you what that means.
I'm illiterate on this, so, thank you.
You're not the only one.
While he's searching, this is the USDA article as an example.
Right.
It points to their website, and it has a narrative about them.
Okay, now,
That's-
you just clicked on that right there to do that, to get that?
That's all I did.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's kind
So-
of how you would appear if you were on there.
So if in the search bar here you type square dance, what that's really saying to the search engine is, find me any article that's got the word square in it. Find me any article that's got the word dance in it. So you'll get lots of things that have one of those words but not the other. And it'll be a large list. Like if we type that in, we get tons. And you can see some of them actually have the phrase square dance in them, but others just have dance. And there's at least 11 pages. I guess it's 11 pages of hits. So if you wanted to make sure that they had both words, when you put a plus sign in front of the word, that says this word must be in the article. So what that search argument says right there is that both the words square and dance must be in the article. Now, given the subject matter, that may mean that it's not really a much reduced list, but let's just say if it gets to anything less than 11 pages. So a lot of those same arguments articles still came up, but now we're down to 9 pages, right? We reduced threw away the articles that didn't have both words in it, that just had one of them.
That's the way of refining it down.
That's a way of refining it down. And let's say that you wanted to do a search on dances that weren't square dances. Whoops. Can't type. So what I typed in there was hyphen square dance. So the hyphen it's actually a negative sign, right? A minus sign. It says, don't want the word square, has to have the word dance. And we should get a completely different mix of articles. And as you can see, yeah, the list changed a lot. So we got stuff in there about dancing. Whoops, there's things that show up with the word square in it. Ooh, this is interesting.
Well, did you put the minus sign before or after the word square?
Put it before.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what you should have, yeah, okay.
So we've got a little search hiccup here. This is what happens when you do live demos, right? You always find little glitches in the code, but it's a very different search result than what we had before, and it's down to 3 pages. But we shouldn't be seeing any article that has the word square in it.
CALLERLAB is there.
I'm wondering, well, it's not saying that, it's not, that doing that search does not exclude things that have to do with square dancing. All it does is, I don't know, are you just searching the titles?
No, it searches the whole articles.
Okay,
But-
so.
But it shouldn't be, there's some glitches with the search engine on this, and I've had this happen before where we get odd glitches like this. Because it really shouldn't show you anything that's got the word square in it. Anyway, Justin, you're about to come in, right?
Breaking you up.
So, we're way over time, so we need to get out of here and let Justin set up for his
So
section.
thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming, thanks Dottie.